Well, great day, everyone, and welcome to Spirit in Mind, where we discuss current affairs with faith and mental health perspectives. I'm Bishop Guy Robinson. I'm really excited to be with you today, and as always, grateful to have Dr. Shepard with us as well. Dr. Shepard, good day to you, sir.
Yes, good day, Bishop. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Amen. Thank the Lord. And grateful to have our Spirit and Mind family um, with us today. And certainly want to thank God for you and encourage you to have others to join us. Feel free to share. Feel free to let someone know that it is time for Spirit in Mind. We're excited about what we're going to discuss today and always look forward to our time of sharing and certainly consider you a part of our Spirit in Mind experience. So certainly we thank God for our Spirit in Mind family. And thank you for letting someone know that it's time for Spirit in Mind. Dr. Shepard usually goes over some of the ways that you can stay in touch with us because connection is key, one of our key values here on Spirit in Mind. So Dr. Shepard, take us from here, won't you please?
Yes, sir. So again, I greet everyone that is out there who is coming on in. Cynthia Hackshaw, Charlotte Green, Maddie Evans, and Juanita Henderson, and Sandra McCrae. And yes, you can please keep in contact with us. Bishop, I received another letter, if you would, or email. I guess it's not a letter, but email notification about the topics that we've been dealing with recently in regards to grief and how to manage your grief and how to fuel your appetite during the season. And one of our viewers who is consistently watching, many times she has to watch the replay because she's at work, even on a Sunday, or doing something where she can't be with us live. But she was literally talking about how it has blessed her. Rhonda Alicia Hayes. And I'm looking for just some of the message now. I always like to pull some of the comments as they are being voiced. But I want you to know that people are sending messages about how this has been life-changing for many of them. Literally, she was talking about how she's been struggling with grief for years. And if I don't have it correct, I believe she had a death of a son or a close family member, and just really been troubling her. And it really has enlightened her, allow, even if you would, some form of relief. I won't call it therapy, but some form of relief that she is getting as she watches and listens to Spirit in Mind. And I think some of you all out there will agree with her. And if that is you, come on, type it in the comments section and say, yes, this has been a help to me. It fuels us when we know that things are hitting home, things are effectively producing results. Yes. Thank you for the amen. Let us know. It's not to pump our head up, it's to let us know we're on the right track, honestly. And so when you do that, here's how you can reach out to me, Jonathan Shepard. You can go to my social media handles, and you can reach out just as Rhonda Hayes has done through social media and to my website or to my office number if you're in need of direct care services. And then you can reach out to Bishop also, and he will gladly respond to you too. And that's how you can reach Bishop. Email address, office, his social media handles. So we're so thankful, and we're really fortunate to hear how God is helping us to manage during this season and time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. Thank you, Dr. Shepard, and thank you, Spirit and Mind family, again, for your response, for your feedback, for your testimonies. Thank you. And for all of your support of what we're led to do here in the work of Spirit in Mind. And so, having said that, and as Dr. Shepard said, we're talking through. Of course, we're in the holiday season, and again, we certainly pray God's best for you during this holiday season. And yet we're also at the same time aware that for some, this can be a very challenging time and even trigger some grief reactions and can be reminiscent of certain critical losses from the past or from the present. And so we've been talking a lot about the grief reactions and some of the things that we can go through in this season, because we hope, as Dr. Shepard said, that we can offer something that is of help to your well-being. And so we have been talking about grief last week. We were talking about apathy and grief, and we referenced By the Rivers of Babylon, Psalm 137, where Israel was really traumatized by the Babylonian experience. Sometimes time and looking at something from a historical perspective can kind of distance us from some of the actual moments. But if we put ourselves in the historical context of this experience of Babylon, which literally means confusion, a state of confusion related to Babel. I don't understand why this has happened. And by the rivers of Babylon, the psalmist testifies, there we sat down and yes, we wept. That's acknowledging the grief when we remembered. So this grief reaction is being triggered by the remembrance of something that was held dear. We remember Zion, which represented the temple, couldn't get to the place of God and couldn't get to familiar places that used to see us through. And so in that, we hung our harps on the willows. We talked about that last week, and all that represented a kind of apathetic state of what's the use. And we talked about the importance of challenging those thoughts. And so we want to pick up from there because there's some key things we think might be helpful. Dr. Shepard is going to take us a little further in our discussion on grief and apathy at this time. And we hope, again, that this is helpful to you. Dr. Shepard.
Yes, sir. So with that said, my brother, well, let's say Pastor Meeks, but Brother Meeks down there he's down there in Memphis, Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. And Bishop, you see, he said he's ready for a Spirit in Mind conference or a retreat. Yeah. So right. I know. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yes. So I just told him, I just put it out there. As I said, man, keep praying for us, keep encouraging us. Hopefully my comments will pop up. For some reason, it is a little slow on my end today. So you see me looking down. That's because I'm trying to make sure that my social media devices are working. But wouldn't that be something to have a Spirit in Mind conference or retreat? And we'll be able to move forward. So keep encouraging us, keep sharing. And who knows what might be in the works as we continue to expand this ministry. So with that said, it still is a nice segue, because when we are talking about apathy, it's one of those words that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but really find themselves in, honestly. A lot of people don't like to talk about the word apathy. They say, "Oh, that's not me." But when you start to look at what that word means and what's defined, and how we even position ourselves in certain situations, we really do fit that definition of apathy. Apathy means lack of feeling or emotion. It is where you have a lack of interest or concern. Yeah. Lack of empathy or lack of feeling or emotion, and lack of interest or concern. And as we talked about this last week, we talked about how apathy is seen within mental health disorders in particularly with depression. And so depression is a common mental health disorder that we see in our country. And I just read, I have a article, I wish I had it near my hands, I would show it to you. But there's been a 3-fold increase in depression since the pandemic. All right. Now,
Yeah.
When you say threefold, you have to understand what that means. All right. That doesn't mean just 3% or even 30%. Threefold. That is quite a increase. And so when you are talking about depression, you're talking about so many different symptoms. But one of the, like I said, one of the major symptoms is apathy, lack of concern. And how does that tie in with grief? Because when we are impacted by grief, at sometimes we don't even feel the sting of the death. How is that so, Dr. Shepard? Because I grieve. Well, when you have complicated grief or cumulative grief, many times apathy will set in. Um, Cumulative grief. That's what so many of us are experiencing right now. Cumulative grief, meaning that death on top of death, on top of death, on top of death. As I was even talking with people this past week, once again, people were saying, "Here we go again, another week where people have died." This past week we've suffered some major losses within church denominations. Church of God in Christ, dear sister Sheila Vickers, who Bishop, I was just on the panel with in May, right after the death of Shirley Joyce Rogers. She was leading, moderating that particular panel, and then now, but 6 months, less than 6 months later, she's gone. It's all of that is just it piles up, and if you're not careful, you'll find yourselves running to funeral after funeral after funeral after funeral, and you haven't taken time to really process what is going on. I'll say it again, and I've mentioned it in some of my previous broadcasts. You have to be careful about how you run from funeral to funeral to funeral, because you'll develop a form of apathy to where you're just there to see what the next thing is happening at another person's homegoing. We got to be careful that that doesn't just become a routine or so plain that we miss out on that. That's part of our grieving process. That's part of what we need to be able to handle the loss that has happened. It's not normal for us to keep running to funeral to funeral to funeral. I'm gonna say it again. It's not normal for us to keep running from funeral to funeral to funeral to funeral, and you haven't yet taken time to process all that has happened. So that's how grief, apathy can tie in. What I hope to do today, Bishop, is I want to talk about some motivation killers. All right, this can tie back into the grief, but reason why we're hanging our hat here today is because as we go into the new year in 2022, we want to make sure that the things that have occurred to all of us in 2020 and 2021 does not come in and set up a foundation of apathy within our appetite for the destiny that God has for us. I'll say it again. If we're not careful, 2020 and 2021 can set up a foundation of apathy to where we will settle for less. And the drive that we had will be somehow quenched. Not I said somehow, it will be quenched if we do not take time to process all that has happened, get reinvigorated, reignited, and allow ourselves to be replenished by the Holy Spirit and the renewing of our minds, so that when we go into the new year, that we are able to now function. And so what we'll do, we'll talk about some of these motivation killers. But Bishop, let me stop there, and then I'll pick back up and we'll start listing some of these motivation killers.
Dr. Shepard, this has been really good. Particularly something you just said in terms of compounded grief and being mindful. I know we talked a little bit about this last week, but being mindful of when and how the number of back-to-back funerals we go to in terms of self-care. And as we were talking about that this week, it occurred to me that we cannot be aware initially because there's so many elements to funerals. There are also social events.
Mm-hmm.
So we may be thinking that we're going socially or out of an obligation socially.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, and so what you just shared is at least bringing to mind some of the other ways. So I'll put it to you in the form of a question so that you can answer it and maybe perhaps address out. So would a person consider perhaps alternate ways? So I've been to so many. For this one, I may sit it out, or for this one, I may call later on, or I may send something in the mail, or I may go to the viewing and pass through as opposed to sitting through the entire moment. And then the next one, maybe I'll do something different. But what I hear you say is challenging us to consider not to get kind of like in that automatic, not even thinking about it, or just thinking about it on the social dimension, or even in some cases, to be quite frank, the business aspects, and just kind of going and going and going. I just think that we don't hear. I don't want to speak and make a hasty generalization, but I'll put it in my experience. You don't hear that kind of discussion and consideration and I'm a church, lifelong church baby, if you will, to a church adult. You don't hear that kind of consideration for the mental health aspects of compounded grief exposure like that. I just think that's so important for us to be mindful.
Yeah, I was at church today, and my pastor was in the process of passing the baton, and one of the leaders was stepping down, and she's going to be going to another field of ministry. But something happened during that service I thought was just so powerful. I guess one of the members who was a part of that department had died. And the pastor just said to her, I'm thankful that you recognize that you needed some time. But she said, I don't think you've ever grieved the loss of that person in your department. And when she said it, it clicked. And the person just went to reach for her and just broke down. And what it let me know is that we can operate on autopilot for so much that we don't take time to recognize that our bodies, our physical bodies, our minds are absorbing all of these hits that we're taking. You just don't enter into a venue or a setting and it does not somehow impact you. That doesn't happen. We were not created like that. That's why we have to be careful where we go. The Bible talks about that. We have to be careful where our feet take us. And so many times we like to harp on that as, a place that is sinful or, a place that we shouldn't be or negative. But honestly, it's not just that. The Bible didn't just say that, just for sinful places. We have to be careful of the environments in which we go into. And we have to know when enough is enough. I had to do that recently. Just the other week, I had 2 funerals I had to go to. And I thought I was going to go, but my work schedule didn't allow me. And I just said, you know what? I'm okay. I was like, I normally, man, I wish I'll be calling people and say, yeah, oh my God, I just feel so bad. Then another one was a dear member of my former church and who I had relation with and had wanted to be there, Bishop. And I said, well, I know I can't go to the funeral. It'd just be too much for me. I'll just go to the viewing. And I couldn't get to the viewing. And I just called the family member and said, look, I thought that I was going to be able to make it, but honestly, I just can't. And I had to be okay with that. You have to be careful of the guilt that will come along with what you feel is your obligation to do. The Lord would, God would guide you as to what things you are to be at and what things you can say, maybe I need to take a pass on that. We have to really pay attention to ourselves. This is a critical time for us. And business as usual cannot be. And I know a lot of people say that for other reasons, but honestly, in relation to how you are entering into settings, entering into situations where you know that you're going to be affected by it, then you need to make sure that you're thinking ahead of time so you can process, so you can be able to come out, okay. Honestly, I'm not sure of a better way to say that, but you want to be able to come out and be able to do why you say you're going to that thing to do. So if you're going to encourage, you want to be able to still be that encourager and come out and not feel, oh my God, so heavy. It was like, I was regretted I came. And some of y'all know what I'm talking about. You've been places where he's like, man, I thought I was going to encourage, but now I feel so heavy. And that's why it's important for you to be built up so that you can do those things, so you can be that encourager for those families.
Yeah, yeah, and that may require what we call some difficult conversations.
Yes.
And even as one of our viewers are asking, how do you handle that with family? And that could be a time for sharing it, and how we frame it. Certainly, is from a place of honesty. If that should come up to be a discussion, I'm not going to. This is why, or I'm not going to be able to make that per se, but this is what I'll do. Or I'm not going to be able to make the funeral, but call in because I wanted to check on you, let you know I'm praying for and with you. Um, those discussions would have to just kind of be pretty forthright, with this understanding that we can only be responsible for our motives and how we express them. God, help me to be clear and honest and precise, and help me to frame it in a way that is honest and that is respectful, that is transparent, but is mindful. And we can only be responsible for what we say. We can't control another person's reaction, how they interpret it, what values they assign to it, the attachment issues they may have, the
Yes.
expectations they may have, the past experiences they may have, the projections, the counter transferences. We can't control that per se. We can only be honest about ourselves. And so and from there, we have to have a clean heart, a pure heart about our intentions. But sometimes we're trying to say that, how can I do this and get the other person to totally accept it? We might not be able to control that initially. We have to wait that out. Sometimes we may have to wait until later on when they understand. So all of that is a part of it. So I just wanted to say that, because this is a different kind of conversation. When you're having these kind of conversations, you're pushing against certain thoughts and certain family traditions and certain social group settings and ideologies. And so the only thing we can do is come before that person with the right motives and the right intentions, and hopefully respectful expressions in sincerity and transparency. But we cannot control the kind of reaction that they will have.
Yeah, Bishop, and you're absolutely right. It does push against our norms that we're used to. But let's look at what our norms have caused us to have. We've seen heart attacks. We've seen strokes. I've seen where people have attended so much in funerals where literally they're not even the same. It's sad, honestly, where grief can overtake you so much to where the grief reaction will cause you to die from a broken heart. It's something, and if you're not careful, you will find yourself being overtaken by that. Um, I've seen where people have even become a little bit insensitive to what's going on within a family. Girl, I'm going to the next funeral. Hey man, come on, we're going to this. Just, I mean, literally, just over and over and over and over and over and over again, and haven't taken time. Flying here, flying there, flying here, flying there, and we just really need to take care of ourselves. Um, Bishop, I think we have yeah, I think we've really kind of uh, beaten that thought, but I want I want to talk about some of these motivation killers.
Yeah,
Uh,
certainly.
yeah. So so what happens when you have that drive, you have that passion, but yet there are certain things that will pull away and kind of use a fire hose, if I would, fire extinguisher, kind of drive that passion out. There's some things that I want to just point out, some 10 motivation killers. And I want us to be aware of these things as we go into the new year. And Minister Cat's going to post some of them here. I'm not going to go through all 10 right now. Bishop is going to, of course, interject. But a few of them are just listed right here. Number one, inadequate rewards. Inadequate rewards. So that will help to kill someone's motivation. People are excited. People want to be a help. People want to do a particular project, but at the end, there is not a adequate result. There's not an adequate reward for that particular thing that they were motivated about. And so, even before I go further there, you have to search yourself and know your motives. Mhm. You have to even search yourself and know your motives when you're going to a homegoing celebration. Bishop, I'm really challenging these norms here, because I know everybody says they're going to a funeral to support the family, but I hate to say it. I know that's not the truth. I'm just going to expose it. I know that, because I've heard people say that they're going because of obligation. They're going because they need to make sure their face is seen. It's not even about the family and what they've lost. Um, yeah, we need to make sure that we're judging uh, our motives of what we do appropriately, because in doing such, then we can determine if the reward that is attached to that is inadequate or not. I hope this is making sense. Some of the stuff that we say is inadequate rewards is because we haven't been truthful about our true motivation for what we're doing, um, yeah, but for those who are, you have good intentions, and yet you find yourselves not getting that inadequate, or not getting a reward that you believe that is rightly yours. It will kill that motivation that you have. Um, Let me ask this question real quick. I see that Diane Sanders has a question, and Bishop, turn over to here. What happens when you die from a broken heart? You hear about this all the time. So yeah, let me just answer that question. There is something that happens when a person dies, especially when you are attached to that person. Normally, we see it with a spouse. We can even see it between a parent-child relationship, dying of a broken heart. When a person dies, and it can be sudden or not sudden, there is a loss that that no one can really describe truthfully, and it literally can shut your body down physically. Mhm. You may stop eating. You might stop caring for yourself appropriately. You can be in such a state of grief and shock to where it causes your body and your systems to go out of whack, and you can literally have a stroke or a heart attack. So when they're saying dying from a broken heart, that's what they're referring to. It's literally a physical reaction in your body that causes the physical body to stop operating, shut down, and you can physically die. Hopefully that answers your question, Diane Sanders.
Yeah, yeah. Very, 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 very relevant. And again, when I'm, we've said this before, but it's reiterating that piece of how fearfully and wonderfully made we are in terms of psychosomatic or mind body interaction and interdependence. That what happens in one area. I know we study them as different disciplines, and there are reasons for that, and we practice them as different professions, and there's reasons for that, but one of the reasons why we have to have these critical collaborations is because we're all part of the same wellness system, ecosystem.
Mhm.
Because what and so what we're talking about is that what happens in one area can influence another area, and so that's very important. And spirit, soul, and body, as First Thessalonians 5:23 says, that holistic health. May the God of peace sanctify you completely, your entire spirit, soul, and body, pneuma, psyche, and soma. They're all really interrelated and interconnected. That bodily injury can certainly have psychological effects and spiritual effects. If you've ever prayed and wondered, and Hezekiah got a diagnosis that was physical. It was existential. You shall surely die. That prognosis is not looking too good. But his reaction was also, it affected him spiritually. He turned his face to the wall and said, God, have I not served you? And began to make his case before the Lord. And so and then even his healing was pronounced by God. You will have 15 more years. But then he's given a treatment plan. He said, go to the tree and get the figs and make a poultice. That's a prescription. And you shall be saved, because these things are. And so, as we were talking about broken heart syndrome, it's all kind of interrelated. Is really, I think, it's just so important. And so, in our discussion and even checking our motivations, I want to get back to that list, because we really could do a show right there, because sometimes we have so many subconscious
Ooh-wee.
motivations and rewards, and just owning them, um, and even bringing them to surface on why we really are doing some of the things we're doing and why we're really going to this event. Uh,
Wow.
can really, really shake us up to really sit with that. But so motivation killers, inadequate rewards, and then let's keep with that, Dr. Shepard. There's some good stuff here.
Yes, sir. So the next one is what we call awful work or office space. So, just a place where you're conducting business. The place where you are working has a huge impact on your productivity and well-being. We've seen that in this pandemic. Oh, absolutely. We're right in line because so many of us have now had to change our place of work. We're either working from home or we're working within our office. And even within our office, it is different. There's so many office spaces now, Bishop, that are just vacant. And when some people go in, it's kind of spooky, if you would, because there's not that many people there. Some people like it, some people don't. And so their productivity has been affected by the workspace, by the environment. I even hate to say it. Some people have been affected by the workspace that they see within their congregation. Oh, absolutely. I've seen it. Some people they've either have it's either increased their drive, or some people say, well, it's not that many people here anymore, so I don't have to really do as much, and then people become lazy. I've seen that where certain jobs where the volume is still there, what we need to do, but because there's been a change in the environment in which we work in, people literally have stopped doing or be as motivated to do what it takes to get the job done. Hope this is making sense. But your space in which you operate can definitely impact your well-being and your productivity. I'll stop there.
Oh, oh, Yeah, yes, sir. That's a realistic thing that can. And so I want to stay when you were talking. My mind went to your work environment. You know, and there's a passage in Ezekiel 37, and
Mm.
it says, "In the Lord, where the Lord came to me, and He set me in a valley." That's what Ezekiel 37 says. He set me in a valley of dry bones. And what was interesting, what came to me as you were talking, is the fact that Ezekiel was a priest and a prophet, and he was actually in Jerusalem. I'm gonna stay with this Babylon theme that we've set up. He was actually, historians say, in Jerusalem when Babylonian invasion came and carried him away into captivity. How that's interesting when you talk about a work environment is because you know, Dr. Shepherd, I know you know, and many of our Spirit and Mind pastors and Bible scholars, is that the priesthood was an inherited position.
Right.
And so there was no question about what Ezekiel was going to be when he grew up, because he came from a lineage of priests, and he was in Jerusalem, which means that his entire expectation, historians say, was that he was going to grow up and minister in Solomon's temple. That was going to be his work environment. And then here comes Babylon. And instead of ministering in the temple, he gets set in a valley of dry bones.
Wow.
And that's when he says, and the Lord says, can these dry bones live? Can you work in this space?
Wow.
And Ezekiel says, look at his answer. I don't know. Lord, you know, this is not what I was expecting.
Right.
This is not where I expected to be at working. The Lord ministers to his apathy and says, speak to it. Prophesy to the wind. And that's powerful. So, get a mindset to shift your work environment. So that just came to mind. I pray that the Lord will minister to somebody who's working in an environment that is not meeting your expectations, which kind of connects to number one again, because you had some rewards that you were looking for that did not happen. And some of them were subconscious, and some of the payoffs that you had were in your mind, and some of them were maybe involving even your work and your profession and your career. You're like, I did all of this, and here I am, but is this it? So this is the kind of thing that we're praying that the Lord will minister to you, and in this case, may you be able to speak to your space. I don't have time to talk about that, but there's a difference between space and place. There's a whole theology of place. Space is room, and place is what we do with space. It's I can't theologically. So may you convert your space into a healthy place.
Right.
You know, you could give a work environment or an office to three different people, and they produce three different atmospheres. Because one decorator may do this, another decorator may do that, another person may decorate it this way, but they turn the space into a place. And may you not turn your space into a place of apathy, but may you prophesy to it like Ezekiel and the word of the Lord until your space becomes a healthy place, whatever space the Lord is giving you. But we just want to encourage I won't stay there any longer, but just want to encourage somebody who is in a place at work that may be trying to drain you, or where you feel drained of your desire to move forward and progress. May you speak to that, and may those dry bones live to the glory of God. Dr. Shepherd, please, this list is blessing me.
Yeah, this is good. And I gotta say this, because Bishop, you just said something in regards to space. When you're in the middle of transition, or getting a new job, or having to be elevated to a different place, you will have a different work environment. So different work environments are required when you're in the midst of transition. So please remember that. And so as you go to that next place and you occupy that next space, listen to what Bishop said. Make sure you occupy that space and turn it into a place, because in order for you to grow, you got to move forward into a different space. And sometimes it will feel awkward in that new space until you make it your own. As I was just telling one of my friends yesterday who was up for a promotion, and sometimes when you get promoted, it may feel like you have to start over at the beginning, but that's because you're in a different space. And so I had to tell them, even where I am right now, it feels like I'm starting over, but I understand that I'm at a different space and I'm going to make it my own, so that I know that I can move forward in the things of God.
Oh
So,
man, Dr. Shepard, and that's where Ezekiel 37 is. It says, and so it's verse 7. I had to pull it up, make sure I wasn't making it up. The Holy Spirit brought it to my remembrance. But verse 37, Ezekiel says, "So I prophesied as I was commanded."
mm-hmm.
meaning I just had to do it because the Lord commanded. He said, "And as I prophesied, suddenly there was a rattling and the bones came together." That's so important. It's our part to keep our self-talk healthy, and to keep our and to motive and to speak those things that are healthy and whatsoever things are lovely. It is God's part. Don't underestimate the part where God will just start to cause things to come together.
Wow.
As we get that healthy, obedient mindset. And God started as he started speaking to the space and the valley of dry bones. Then God started moving and honoring the words that were coming out of his mouth in obedience. So keep your self-talk healthy in this place and in that work environment, and watch God do some parts that only God can do to help it come together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good. So then the next on our list is no self-development. This is a motivation killer. So what happens when you need that opportunity to grow, but you're not giving it? You need the opportunity to grow, because if you're not learning, what happens? You fall behind. Um, this is what we're seeing now with our children, Bishop. There is a apathy that is occurring within our current educational system today. Oh, I know I'm saying something here. When you talk to children about what they're learning in school today, I'm talking about present day, many of them are not even enthusiastic about going to school. They're not, that fervor is been quenched, because there is a lack of wanting to do better. There's a lack of people investing in them. Yeah, it's just, when you're not given the opportunity to learn, you find yourself falling behind. And that's where so many of our students find themselves today in our educational system. They have fallen behind. And I was just reading an article again this past week that certain schools, they're now closing every Friday, Bishop, or they're shut down every other week for some other reasons. It might be a COVID-19 outbreak, or because the teachers are burned out, or whatever it might be. But they find themselves just not able to learn. And the children are the ones who are really affected by this. It's a motivational, it's a motivational killer. If a child if a child doesn't see how this has something to do to develop him or her, there's no need for it in their eyes. And so this is what happens, and not just with children. I just thought that would be a good example, one that we could all relate to. But that happens when you are working in an environment with a leader, a manager, who does not see the need for investing in you. They see it as more of as a business expense, or some type of extra curricular activity, if you would. But self-development is important. And when you don't have that, that can be a motivational killer.
Absolutely, Dr. Shepard. And I'll see, that reminded me of the importance of even having healthy relationships.
Mhm.
Uh, Even as Proverbs says that iron sharpens iron, and that lack of development. Well, and your example of using children and the schools, it reminded me of one of the things early on in my in my pastoral service where we served. One of the early on projects we did was working with our school system, because our school system came to us and told us something that really motivated us and made clear a way in which we needed to serve. And that was that we had in our zip code, our church was located in one of the areas of the city with the highest truancy rate.
Wow.
Um, People just were not attending school. And one of the reasons was because there was a cultural pressure that literally growing and going to the next level educationally was not encouraged.
Mhm.
It was actually frowned upon,
Wow.
where if you will, growth was a negative in the social circles, where you were actually punished for growing to the next level. And so it kind of created an atmosphere, and that sociologically is related, quite frankly, to there's some major studies between poverty. And I'm not just talking about poverty as finances, but poverty really means a lack of adequate resources to promote growth, whether they be friends, human resources, financial resources, business resources, all of that. But when you lose hope in the future, it can cause you to become apathetic about growing because you don't really see the future
Right.
as a viable possibility. And so we began to learn that some of that truancy was connected to a low life expectancy mentality.
Right.
And so we had to form strategic partnerships in various ways, in efforts. And that's when we began partnering with schools in that neighborhood, because, or in our zip code, in hopes that we could help change the culture, because if you're hanging around people that don't want to grow, then that can kind of contribute to our apathetic state. And so, please, let's find some friends that motivate each other. Like, again, we talked a few shows ago about the four leprous men who said, "Listen, why sit we here and die? Let's if we gonna go out, let's go out trying to get to the next level." And so,
Mhm.
but you hang around people that encourage us, and accountability circles that challenge us out of those apathetic states. That's what came to mind for me.
And with that said, then the next letter, or the next number, I should say, is insufficient collaboration. So when you have insufficient collaboration, that is a motivational killer. So let me take that a little further. If you look at the study that I pulled from in relation to this 10 motivation killers list, it states on average 39% of people feel their input isn't appreciated in a situation like this. Or how long are you motivated to give your best? And when I mean like in this, it means, or a situation such as that is because, well, you find yourself in a situation where you want to share, or you are sharing with your boss or the people who are over you, supervisor, and it's not appreciated. And when that happens, you find yourself, well, why do I give my best? Why do I continue to allow myself to be utilized when it's not being appreciated? Chances are that sooner or later, your performance will begin to suffer. And so we have to be able to improve our internal communication and collaboration. When you are a manager, when you're a supervisor, when you are a pastor, you have to be able to improve your internal communication and collaboration so that there is that adequate collaboration between people. Collaboration just simply means of working together. That's what that means. being able to recognize each other's strengths and weaknesses so that you can come together to emphasize emphasize the strengths and minimize the weaknesses so you can have a finished product. But when there is insufficient collaboration, people feel like they're not needed, that they're not wanted, that they're not even appreciated or worthy, I should say, of working in that particular field, project, or with those particular persons. So that could be a motivational killer.
Yeah, that's Dr. Shepard. That's so solid. We can keep going because we talked about that. The importance of even now as we're talking about wellness ecosystems and working together, and this teamwork piece is so very critical. We even see it. It takes teamwork and multiple efforts. We've seen it in this pandemic. What a shame it would be. It seems like one of the keys to defeating this pandemic is being able to collaborate, to see the connections, to respect the expertise of the scientific community, to respect that it's a psychological component to it, that it's a biological component to it, and there's a spiritual component to it, and there's a policy making component to it, and there's planning and bringing all of these together and seeing each other as collaborators, which, as you said, means co-laborers working together, instead of the temptation to constantly see each other as competitors. That is so very important, so that we can appreciate what each person brings to the table, so that we can grow to the next level and not stalemate or become apathetic, not just individually, but even socially. And in terms of community. So I'm with it, Dr. Shepard. Let's go. What is another?
Yes, sir. Number 5, too many negative people. And that really coincides with what we've talked about already. When you find yourself around too many negative people, that will kill your motivation. So you, again, watching your company, we've talked about that in other numbers that we've just discussed. We have to watch the company that we keep. But when you find yourself keep attracting too many negative people, you need to look at yourself and say, what is this that people are finding themselves attracted to within me, that they find comfortability and keep spewing out this negative stuff? Now, sometimes we have to work on a project with negative people. I think about those projects I had to work with in school. I just got assigned randomly to certain people. So that's true. You may find yourself in those situations, yes. But I'm talking about those people who you have control over, and the people who you have control over who comes into your circle. I'm thankful for our brother Martin, who was saying your circle is critical, and it is critical, absolutely. And you have too many negative people within that circle, you yourself are going to be negative, and your motivation is going to be quenched. Absolutely. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah. And positive people doesn't just necessarily mean ego stroking, but it means moving us forward. And sometimes that can even be in ways that challenge us. Proverbs 27:6 says, the faithful are the wounds of a friend, better than the kisses of an enemy. And so sometimes that friend can help motivate us in ways that initially, you get on my nerves, but they got their best interest at heart. So we're not talking about just having, this generation sometimes has some sensitivities, and we say we want mentors, but we really just want cheerleaders and promoters and marketers. So it doesn't just mean that, but positive people just mean people that put me in the direction of moving forward, of maturing, of growing, of reaching success. So that's so very important. Yes, Dr. Shepard, what's next on this list?
All right, number six. I know we're getting close to the end of time here. Fear of failure. Fear of failure is a motivational killer. So we recognize that everyone has to endure failure. There is no straightforward road to success. I know I wish there was a pathway to success. for everybody to figure out and just know from the very beginning. But everyone will experience failure. It's part of the human experience, but it's how you recover from the failures. And so sometimes people are scared to fail, and it kills their motivation to move forward. Let's look at this. You find yourself staying in the comfort zone. Yes, you might feel comfortable, but is it going to be sustainable in the long run? Some of us, we find ourselves just in that place of comfort for so long, and we just operate and we keep focusing in our strengths, and yet we haven't really moved or stretched ourselves that far. And if you're not careful, that apathy will set in and say, I'm good. You might even realize that you become apathetic. I'm not interested in that no more. I'm just, let me just, I want to be the peacemaker. But they're not the peacemaker. That's the Lord does call for us to be peacemakers, but not in that way in which you're trying to exude. And I found myself there. I'll just be honest with you. The Lord stretched me this year like never before. I found myself in a place of uncomfortability. And I said, God, this don't feel good. And he said, I know it don't. He said, I placed you here because if you're going to be stretched to the fullness of what I have called for you to do, you have to be uncomfortable. And let me tell you, that's enough sometimes to kill somebody's motivation to move forward, because it's just like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to fail. There's some people out there just like me. We're not big risk takers. And I don't want to fail. I don't want to disappoint somebody. And I hear God challenging me. I'm not talking about you. He challenged me in 2022, where my faith will continue to rise and be increased. So even when I can look and see that some of this stuff may not be lining up just yet, but that's where that faith component kicks in. And that has to be my motivational drive to continue to do what God has called for me to do.
Wow. That's this might be as far as we get, but that piece is so major, because you're talking about when you have purpose in you, and the fear, and we let the fear keep us in an apathetic state and paralyzed. That can really be a place of conflict, because we can be comfortable to a sense in the apathy of, now I know I won't fail, but there's something in us that still knows that there is more that is in us.
Wow.
And as we say often on this Spirit in Mind, Dr. Shepherd, as you were talking about that, I was thinking we often quote the World Health Organization's definition of mental health. That is that you've the first one starts with fulfilling our potential.
Yes.
Now that potential, as you know, can be dormant. So there is dormant potential. That's our purpose.
Wow.
And spiritually, that means that's the reason God put us here. And the Bible in Ecclesiastes says God has set eternity in the heart of man. I got something in my heart, which means my inner man, my psyche, my ways of thinking, my internal self, as I have a knowledge in my heart of a purpose that isn't yet in my possession. I got thoughts and dreams that are bigger than my environment, than my present surroundings. And so now here's the conflict. To get there, I got to risk some experiences with failure. And that won't stop pushing me. Yes, thank you, Jacqueline Shaw. That's one of my favorite songs. I'm alive because there's more. And so that theme keeps driving, and that's really a theme. That's a spiritual theme that says there's got to be more than this, because there's eternity in my heart. My heart is small, but God put something in it that is conscious of more.
Wow.
And my fear has me stagnant. And so in a sense, I'm taking comfort in my place of complacency, but something inside of me is conflicting because it's saying there's more. There's more you're supposed to be and become. Now that's affecting my ability to fulfill my potential and make the contribution I'm supposed to make to this world, which means that now it's affecting my mental health by the definition that we give so often.
Wow.
And then that's, Alice Miller is famous for one of her books, The Body Never Lies. And now because it's more connected than we said,
Yes.
and now it starts affecting me not just physically but somatically, and so that's why it's so important that we not stay in this, let the fear of failure keep us in this place of apathy and complacency, out of that fear. Oh my goodness. So I know we out of time, but we'll pick up this list because there's more.
Yes, there's more. Yes, sir. This is good. This is good. So please, share with us your thoughts. Continue to reach out to us. We shared at the beginning of the broadcast how you can contact us. Here you go again. Please reach out to myself. Social media handles are listed there, website, phone number to the office if you're in need of direct care services. You can reach out to Bishop Guy Robinson. Please do that, and he'll greatly appreciate it and reach out to us. And so, yes, Bishop, and then I would want to appreciate the Spirit of Mind audience and let them know they are invited. If you are in the DMV area, yes, or if not a DMV area, because there's some people coming from across the country. I'm celebrating my birthday once again. I'm alive because there's more, Bishop. and I say that because this birthday celebration is not just for me, because as of last year, I've continued to donate the monies that are given to me for my birthday to 2 non-for-profit organizations. And the Lord has been kind to allow me to raise significant dollars. And I want to do that again. I have a goal in mind of $20,000 on that event to be able to divide between 2 non-for-profit organizations. You might say, well, Dr. Shepherd, that's a lofty goal. Well, last year I did it. The Lord allowed me to do it. I didn't do it. The Lord allowed me to do it with your help of $11,000 virtual platform. And so I just believe God will fill in the increase, allow that to be reached. And I will send out some messages, check out social media pages. And I've just praised God because I could have been apathetic, Bishop, because I couldn't celebrate last year. But the Lord allowed that to not allow my purpose to get diminished or extinguished, if you would. But I had to push past that. And even this year, let me just say that I must testify, even with the losses that I have had this year alone, in October and November, I was going to give up and not do this. But God said, I still have this in mind for you to be a blessing to the people of God. And so I had to go ahead and move forward, even when it was hard to do. And so I just want to be a living example of what it is to push past when you are in the middle of grief. And so thank you all. I appreciate your support in advance. That's all, Bishop.
That's good, because there's more. Thank you, Sister Deaconess Jacqueline Shaw, for putting that song in my remembrance. We get ready to go. I'm going to listen to that right now. This is not an accident. I'm alive because there's more. Spirit of Mind family, you're alive because there's more that God has in store. I have not seen, ear have not heard, neither has it entered into the hearts of men the great things that God has prepared for us. This is not an accident. It's purpose in it. Hallelujah. And so thank you for joining us. And as the Lord gives us grace, we look forward to seeing you. Well, let me start there. We see you at Dr. Shepherd's celebration as we celebrate him and the charities that will be beneficiaries of our gathering. And then by the grace of God, we look forward to seeing you next time on Spirit in Mind.